First and foremost, I get the pleasure of welcoming everybody to the Michigan Political History Society's event on the 1993-1994 legislative session, often referred to as Shared Power. And as everybody knows, that was when the Democrats and the Republicans both held a 55-55 split in the Michigan House of Representatives. My name is Dan Papineau, and I have the pleasure of being the current president of the Michigan Political History Society. Our past president, Carrie Ebersol Singh, was a rock star, so I have big shoes to fill. First and foremost, we have to thank our sponsors. Because of our sponsors, this event was able to be hosted for free. Our sponsors are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, Carubin Associates, the Michigan Catholic Conference, and much more Harrington Smalley Associates. So again, we really thank you for that. So how many of you here tonight have never been to a Michigan Political History Society event? Great. Well, that's what we want more of. We want more people to get involved with NPHS. And for those of you that don't know what we do, I want to share a little bit with you about our purpose statement. One sentence of our purpose statement with you. Knowledge of Michigan's political history and understanding of its impact throughout time provides a framework for envisioning our future. And I think that's really important. Well, our political environment has had and will continue to have major impact on the quality of life of Michigan citizens. There is limited understanding of the political history that has brought us to this point in time. The Michigan Political History Society has evolved in recognition of the need to appreciate that past as to better envision our future for our great state. We're nonpartisan, we're bipartisan, we're apartisan, however you want to put it. We're a mix of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, young, old, from all over from Michigan. But we all come together with the common interest of history. And I think that's really, really beautiful. For all those that are still wanting to find out more about who we are, please check us out at mipoliticalhistory.com. You'll find all of our resources, all the information we have that we put out there to document Michigan's political history, our old histories, and many other things. Of course, if you're not a member, please become a member. It's not a huge commitment. You'll be on our email list. You'll be able to attend all of our events. You'll see us. We do several events a year. And for me, it's been a really great opportunity. Maybe it's my love of history, but I think it's my love of politics and my love for our state that really gets me through the most. Another piece of history that I have to address tonight is about NPHS itself. I don't know if anybody knows, but it's our 25th anniversary. In February of 1993, a small dinner party was held at the Lansing City Club, which has become a piece of Michigan's history itself. But attendees included Kevin and Jamie Kelly, Richard McClellan, Charmin Moore, and many others, some of whom are with us tonight. The purpose of the gathering was to discuss the book, 3 Bullets Sealed His Lips, a detailed account of the series of events leading up to and after the murder of former State Senator Warren Hooper. The enthusiasm and fun surrounding that small dinner party resulted in expanding the group and eventually snowballed into a larger gathering of over 80 political notables convening at Dusty's English Inn to hear directly from the authors of 3 Bullets Sealed His Lips, Larry Ziowicz and Bruce Rubenstein. The authors provided an even more in-depth review of the mysterious and unsolved murder of a prominent Michigan politician, and a lively question and answer session drew on into late hours of the night. During the dinner party, a pianist played soft music that could be heard in the background amidst the conversation and laughter of all. On that night, as a memento to the occasion, each guest was given a brass bookmark imprinted with the words Michigan Political History Society, founded in 1993. With us tonight, we have 11 of the original founding members of the Michigan Political History Society. I would like to recognize them by reading their names and then applauding them at the end. Charmin Moore, Richard McClellan, Gina Nelson, Tom Cleary, Paul and Carol Kahn, Linda Gobler, Jim Hageman, Bob LeBrand, Dennis Pardis, and Craig Ruff. A group as politically diverse as our membership is today. We have commemorative bookmarks for you here today as a token of your dedication to Michigan political history and starting something so meaningful and important. Show a little smaller. Very similar to the ones that were given away 25 years ago. Okay, well, we have the distinguished honor to be with Mr. Paul Hilligans and Mr. Dan Lefkowitz. There is one person that unfortunately cannot be with us. To pay tribute to co-speaker Curtis Hertel Sr., who served alongside Mr. Hilligans in the 1993-1994 legislature, I'd like to introduce Senator Curtis Hertel Jr.
I want to thank the Michigan Political History Society for giving me this opportunity to honor my father and for remembering that time in legislature. I'm joined by my family, my beautiful wife Elizabeth, my brother Representative Kevin Hertel, my mom Vicki Hertel, my aunt Cindy, my uncle Congressman Uncle Dennis, my sister Lisa, and my favorite niece, Lyle. She's my only niece. I'm also so happy that this is in a bar. Now there are three reasons. One, nobody loved bars more than my father. He loved every kind of bar. Nice bars, fancy bars, dive bars, other kinds of bars. He spent a considerable amount of time with his friends around town finding the best places. And in fact, many of the decisions that were made in the legislature were decided really in bars like this. Also, the fact that it's a brew pub. One of the best pieces of legislation my dad had was the brew pub bill that allowed places like this to exist. And finally, his career started with a bar. My grandparents owned a bar on the east side of the street. My grandfather got back from World War II and was a barkeep until he decided to go back to school and become a teacher. And three brothers all started their career in Kaufman's Cafe, working the bar, meeting constituents, having their first fundraisers there. So really, if you live in the right neighborhood on the east side of Detroit, my dad was your state rep, Uncle John was your state senator, and Michael Dennis was your congressman. And between those three and Kevin and myself, that's over a century of service to the state of Michigan. And none of it happened without a bar on the east side of Detroit. I sat at my father's desk this afternoon to think about what to talk to you about. And that's an amazing political history story in itself. Weird things happen in life. When my dad passed 2 years ago on Easter Sunday. Last year, on Good Friday, there was a man in my office and didn't know me, Adam didn't know my history, heard that I was someone good to ask advice from. And he's sitting there, and he looks up at the Capitol, and he says, I really like the history of the Capitol. I just bought a desk that belonged to the Speaker of the House in the 90s. And I said, I need to see that, please. And he showed me a picture. And I can remember being a kid, rifling through his drawers, looking for things. And that was his desk. And so now it's in my office. And I can tell you that I feel my father's presence all the time, but I never felt it more that day. And I know that he's looking down on Kevin and I, and how proud he is of everything we accomplished. And the other brothers and sisters too, I don't know why. But I thought a lot about what my dad would say in these times, and in these difficult times. And what I'd say is a couple of things that I think he'd say. One, to remember to love where you were. My dad loved the Capitol building. In fact, I think one of the things he was most proud of was the restoration of the Capitol. A reminder that the Capitol doesn't belong to a legislator or a governor, but it belongs to the people. And there's a sense when you walk in that building of ownership of people. And my dad always believed in that and honored it. And he loved the institution of the House. And I know that for two reasons. One, it never would have worked. The 55-55 majority would have never worked. Shared power would have failed if he didn't love the institution. He didn't call shared that. Well, it was one thing. They didn't share a lot in common, but they did share that. The other thing is that when I got elected to the Senate, my dad was fiercely proud of being in the House. The Senate was a different thing. Right? And that night he told me, he looked at me and said, son, I want you to know, I'm so proud of you. But I had a lot of friends that went to the Senate, and they all turned out to be assholes. I'm sure he's not talking about some of it. But there was a sense of humility that he was trying to instill in me, which I think is important. He would also tell you to love people. My dad loved people. He was a people collector. He didn't so much differentiate people because of their jobs. I talked to so many people in the legislature who got their careers starting off interning in my dad's office, who were brought into important meetings with important people, and it did not matter what title they had, it did not matter what job they had. If they knew something, if he wanted to know more about it, he would bring him in. He would always treat everyone with respect. And I think sometimes in this business, we treat people like stepping stones, right? So people would jump from person to person, and he would never do that. He was more like sheets and ladders. The way that you treat people on the way up is the way they'll treat you on the way down. And they're going to be up and they're going to be down, and we're not used to that. And I think that's a very important lesson that we often forget today. And he loved his caucus members. For those of you that served in my father's caucus when he was speaker, he considered you family. And nothing was more important other than his family than caucus members. I can remember a story of the head of General Motors in his office. And a caucus member came in and had a problem. And my dad left that meeting, somebody who was a major donor and all those things, to go talk to the caucus member because what their wants and needs were the most important thing. And so he loved the people that he worked with, and that was incredibly important to him. And the other thing that I think that's really important to him, and this is, I think, why Paul and him were able to get along so well, is the other side is not evil. They're dead wrong, but they're not evil. Too often, I think, now, we live in a bubble of our own making. We can watch our own news, we can read our own news, we can basically live in a bubble where everyone agrees with us. And so it's easy to see the other side of people, or not. Don't get me wrong, my father was a fierce partisan. He certainly fought for what he believed in. I'm not saying that everyone has to be, somewhere in the middle all the time. But the answer oftentimes comes with two sides working together and talking to each other. But I think it's funny because sometimes, Kevin and I will hear, well, you guys are more partisan than your father was. And I'm like, maybe, but I will tell you that my father, before shared power agreement, sat on the House floor and gave a speech comparing the other side of the aisle to the people who bribed Judas. So I'm pretty sure the partisanship was in his blood too. But he never thought people were evil. We would have dinner, we'd go on vacation with members of the other side. He really instilled that in me. And I do believe that fresh legislators need to learn that the other side is not the enemy. The Senate of the House might be the enemy, but the other side is not the enemy. And I think that's very, very important because most of the time, people out there are not Republicans or Democrats. We are. The people are just people that want their kids' school to be good, their roads to be fixed, to pay as little as taxes as possible to get there. That might not be possible, but that's what they want. And I think it's our sense to do that. So, I think that's really important. My dad wore many hats in his life. He was a friend, he was a Speaker of the House, he was a hockey fan. The most important thing he ever did was be a family man. That was the most important thing to him. At the end of the day, none of the titles mattered. He wasn't an important person, he had an important job. I never saw my dad as someone who was better than us. I mean, he talked to us like we were equals. When I can't remember, he was Speaker of the House, and he would show up at every football game, every play, I had a band, rock band, he would show up at every show. I mean, he loved his kids passionately. He loved his wife. He loved his grandkids. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing in life. So if we can remember that humility, that none of us are that important. At the end of the day, all of us will be just people. The show won't last forever. But at the end of the day, remember what's important. Good drink, good friends, and your family. Thank you.
Very well done. Thank you. Okay, so now at this time, I want to introduce our facilitator, Rick Pluta, producer and reporter with Michigan Public Radio Network. Rick Pluta has been covering Michigan's capital, government, and politics since 1987, which I can quickly tell you is 31 years ago, because that's how old. In addition to his everyday work in and around politics, he co-hosts the weekly segment, It's Just Politics, on Michigan Radio with Zoe Clark. Rick is also a political commentator, guest appearing on shows like Off the Record, among others. Rick is fascinated by the game of politics and the grand plans and human foibles that go into policy making. And I've also found out that you will never find him ice fishing. So, Rick Pluta.
I feel like Keith Richards. Just arranging the deck chairs. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you to the Michigan Political History Society for the invitation. Let's get right down to business. I'm going to introduce our key panelists, starting with Dan Lepp, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And who of us were around during Shared Power ever thought that Danny would wind up there? He was appointed to the position in 2006, and since then has led initiatives to improve healthcare quality and slow cost increases, saving nearly $1.5 billion through several programs that have garnered recognition in 25 countries across 5 continents. Who saw that coming? So, prior to joining Blue Cross in 2000, Dan had an extensive career in government. He was, and most significantly for our event this evening, Chief of Staff for Co-Speaker Curtis Hertel. He also served as Director of Communications for Michigan Attorney General Frank Kelly. Some of you may have heard of him. And he was also a staff member for Congressman Dennis Hertel. And very, very significantly for this, Dan wrote a book that's basically sort of serving as the foundation of our program this evening about the shared power experience. And just because there's not enough irony in our existence, Dan's work at Blue Cross Blue Shield also funded something known as the Michigan Health Endowment Fund. And the CEO of that institution is the Republican co-speaker of the House, Paul Hilligan, who's our other guest this evening. So he, before that, he retired, quote unquote, after serving as DTE Energy Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs. He served in the State House from 1979 to 1996 and served as co-speaker of the House in the 1993-94 session. So, first of all, I'd like to welcome them up here. So, come on up, guys. While they're coming up, I want to talk about me. Election night, November 1992. I'm sitting in my office in the State House Bureau of United Press International. It's in the basement of the Capitol following the election returns. Now, at this point, the power structure in Lansing was fairly established. The Senate was Republican, the House was Democratic, and we really didn't have any reason to believe that a big change was coming. That's despite the fact that just 2 years previously, Republican John Engler had staged an upset of the Democratic governor, Jim Blanchard. But we just didn't see a big change coming. As the returns came in, a different picture emerged. Republicans were winning an unexpected number of seats. The Democratic speaker from the Saginaw area, Lou Dodak, lost his re-election bid. And then Republicans had won control, except no, they hadn't. Or yes, they hadn't. No, they hadn't. And it actually took a few days to sort out whether or not we had actually seen a shift of power in, in the State House and in Lansing that was profound in nature. So, now if I'm remembering correctly, the first thing that had to happen was we had to sort out an election in Macomb County, right, Dan?
That's correct. Actually, the election night it was 56-54. I think about a day later, and I remember this, the Democrats were commiserating at Trippers because it appeared that we were done, so to speak. And Art Miller called Joe Palomari, right? Called Joe Palomari. Art was the senator from Warren, and said, "Oh my God, Oshoggi won by 7 votes." And so this whole thing flipped over, and Dennis ended up winning by 7 votes. There was a tabulation error, and all of a sudden it's 55-55, and then all the fun began.
So, and 55-55 probably never looked so good at that point.
Certainly now, at the time, I was running the service station games, so I didn't even have a dog in the hunt other than being Curtis's friend. But it did. It was because the up and down of the attitudes and the feelings at the time were unbelievable amongst the Democrats. Because if you imagine, the Democrats controlled things in the House basically forever, well back into the 70s. And for this to happen, for a sitting speaker to get beat, you just don't figure that's going to happen. And so people were totally down in the dumps. And then this happened, which was almost, if you scripted it, nobody would believe it.
So, 55-55. What's your next move?
Well, before I get to the next move, I do want to thank the old House Republican staff that's here. They put us in a position on policy and political front to reach that point. But I also want to thank Bob LeBrand, who drew the redistricting map.
Not for the last time.
We started looking, with the help of John Engler, for a 56th vote in the Democratic caucus for a couple of months. And the Democrats, meanwhile, talked about changing the rules of the House so that if we couldn't agree on who would lead, the party that led in the previous session would lead in the new session. So that was the leverage Democrats had. And in the end, Jeff McKelvey is here. Our last vote was Joe Peretta. And he invited us to a New Year's Eve dinner. And we expected him to announce to us that he would be our 56th vote. And he announced that he would not be. He's sticking with the Democratic caucus. And I will never forget that announcement at the Grosse Ile Country Club. But our drive back, when I told Jeff it is time to move on and think about how we'll share power.
You told me about this, that you made a decision after that the pursuit of the 56th vote, that key 56th vote, that at that point it had become kind of perilous vis-a-vis the problem, the promises that you would have to make. Explain why.
The cost would have been considerable. One Democratic caucus member we talked to said, I'll switch if you make me chair of the Appropriations Committee. But beyond those kinds of asks, I was starting to get the gut feeling that it would be almost impossible to lead a caucus of 56 with one who had switched over. That in some ways shared leadership might be easier than to lead that kind of caucus. Because every vote would become a new deal to get something done. And I have to say honestly, in many ways, leading the next term of caucus at 56 was harder than doing shared leadership at 55.
So, a question in two parts, but I want you to answer the first question first and then we'll circle back. What, in your opinion, were the big accomplishments of the shared power legislature? And then I want to circle back and ask you if you thought that they could have been accomplished in a different environment. What were the big accomplishments?
Well, I think that if you look at it, things got done. There was a lot that got done because people worked together. You were forced by Paul said this morning when we were on with Michael Patrick, that the numbers, the math, forced people to look at what you needed to do. And what was interesting about it is that once that happened, you had people like Kirk Prophet back there, who was the chair of the tax committee with Bill Bullard. They tried to figure out how to do things. We had people like, if you think through it, and those that were there or around there, the fact that Tim Walberg and Nick Shimentero, I think it was the Government Appropriations Subcommittee, worked well together, and if you asked both of them today, they would tell you that that was a great experience for both of them. And you could go on and on and on about the various couples of chairs of committees that just figured it out. And then in the end, you always needed either a Republican vote to do something, if you were a Democrat, or a Democrat vote if you were a Republican. And so it forced people to sort of look inside their souls and do the right thing. But most of all, it was the two leaders. Curtis had a touch to him that had a touch to him that was phenomenal. He had patience, he would listen, and he never went off. And then he became, because Paul, for as much as they served together in the House, they didn't really know each other very well. And the truth of the matter is, even though they both, Curtis Jr.'s point, were political, you could not have that job without understanding partisan politics of where you're at and what you're doing. but they rose above that, and they were both alike, because you had caucus members on Paul's right and on Curtis's left that were very demanding, and they were able to manage that, and I don't think you could have done what they did in any other situation, because the situation was so different that you would ever get. And the rules that we came up with when we negotiated the deal, it's amazing that like, for example, the silver bullet. You had one bullet a month, you had 13, or 12 or 13 silver bullets. Never in the 2 years.
Explain what the silver bullet is.
It meant that if there was a tie, the speaker could invoke a extraordinary vote to put a bill out of committee, and it was never used. And I think that gives you a flavor of what was going on at that time.
We should talk a little bit just about the process, or at least explain it. That the way the arrangement was set up was that there was a month-to-month switch, and the party that controlled the House floor on any particular month was not the party that held the committee gavels in that month. So on any given month, one party controlled committees, and the other party controlled the floor. How did you arrive, Paul, at that arrangement?
We actually studied the experience other states had had. The extremes were one state with an evenly divided legislature chose to flip a coin, and whoever won the flip would control in the first year of a 2-year term. Having been in the minority for 24 years, we didn't like our chances. The other extreme was Indiana, that had just before our experience had ended up in a tie, and they decided to change presiding officers every other session day. And that, talking with legislators there, that was really chaotic. So, having been out of control for 20 years, or 24 years, and really wanting to influence, if not control, influence the agenda, we really wanted time to have the chance to have bills move forward. So we figured a month in control of the committee agenda, and then a month, the next month, to preside on the floor, would give us a reasonable window to move important legislation forward, realizing we'd still be bipartisan agreements. The irony is, and Dan has alluded to this, that shared leadership, which started with a lot of skepticism, if not cynicism, really took hold in our caucuses. And there were so many of the committees where co-chairs started working together on what the agenda would be for the month. And it didn't matter who presided. And likewise, Curtis and I would meet regularly to talk about what was coming up on the agenda on the House floor. It really changed the dynamic. And Rick, this gets you maybe asking this question, but you know, what happened after we decided to work toward shared leadership? Curtis Jr. talked about this day affinity for bars. It was really the whole bar, where Dennis Muchmore set up a date for us. He said to me, and probably to Curtis, you don't know each other very well. You haven't served on the same committees. You need to sit down and get to know each other. And I propose that you meet in this bar and just talk. And that ended up in a 2-hour conversation, first about the love of our families, and then about the love of the institution. You know, Curtis Jr. nailed it. That's really what motivated Curtis. And that was the beginning of a friendship. And many meetings, even after the legislature, Curtis introduced me to a lot of bars in Detroit. But one of the blessings of shared leadership was a lifelong friendship, which I feel blessed to have had. And I also said this last night, I was at the Blue Cross Blue Shield Commission event, but I am so thankful for Dan and my chief of staff, Suzanne Miller Allen, whose work, after Curtis and I said, okay, let's work it out, the details with our floor leaders, Pat Gagliardi, Rick Bandstra, but the details and the trust building really evolved with Dan and Suzanne. And they got us through a lot of hard spots in our own caucuses as we had to deal with managing the House. And so thank you, Dan.
I actually want to turn it over to you for a moment, and I want to talk about the personalities and the leadership and how that plays into this. And Kevin and Curtis, I can only remember your father raising his voice in my presence once, and I told you the story about that. But he was a leader who was not prone toward drama. And Paul, I know you before I was a journalist, and I don't think I've ever heard you raise your voice. And I want you to sort of step into the role as a staffer and observer, as someone who wrote a book about this man. How did the personalities of the two leaders play into making this arrangement work?
I think Paul had it. I mean, the love of the institution was probably the core of how it played out. But their personalities, not their politics, but their personalities were similar. And they very rarely got ruffled. And if Curtis got ruffled, it wasn't anybody could see it, and it didn't happen very often. And he never did raise his voice. I've known him, and we go back until our teens, and he just, that wasn't his style. He didn't do that. And I think that calming influence was helpful for our caucus. Because Curtis won by, I think it was 2 votes when he got elected the Democratic leader and ultimately the speaker. And so it wasn't, it was not a landslide, although people coalesced and people like Morris Hood, who happened to be on the other side of the caucus election, could have been Curtis's better friend before he passed the 4.5 years that Morris served. So,
And it would be fair to say that Morris Hood was passionate.
I can still remember him calling me forever. I don't know if Morris ever knew my name. He just called me Kier. And, Morris was, but I think the patience and the deliberation and the reasonableness both leaders had an impact on their own caucuses. Even those that didn't agree with them, either on the right or the left, because both caucuses had that issue, where Paul was, Paul and Curtis were pretty much in the middle of their caucuses. But that meant for a lot of people either on the right or the left, and to manage that was pretty significant.
Did you guys, and you decide who wants to take it first, did you guys find that you had to quell uprisings within your caucuses during this period?
There were some difficult moments, and I remember Curtis and I walking out of our respective caucus rooms to huddle about how we were going to deal with our own caucuses. Truly. And those were usually around some very hard votes where compromise was necessary. I'm sure we'll talk about Proposal A, but in our caucus, asking for at least half the caucus to go for a tax increase was difficult. And there were issues, it was issues like that I'm sure Curtis experienced too.
I think also that we were collectively, both sides benefited from the floor leaders, because both floor leaders, Rick Bandstra and Pat Gagliardi, were different in different ways from the leaders. And I think that really helped when you had those problems, because it wasn't just Curtis in our case, and I think it's Paul in his case. You had the leadership skills of a person like Pat, who I knew obviously a lot better, but you could see that in Rick Bandstra too. And I think that had a calming effect in the sense it wasn't just the two leaders, it was the leadership that generally, and everybody's, those leaders, even if they disagreed, I'm sure Rick and Paul were never on the same page all the time, most of the time. And same with Pat and Curtis, but both of those floor leaders were committed to their leaders and acted as a team, and I think that made a difference.
I will add, I do think Curtis had a much tougher job in that respect because he had a caucus that had never served without being a majority. I had a caucus that never had served in the majority, and for us, it was exhilarating to have as much influence as we had. The other dynamic, which Dan writes about, and by the way, if you haven't read this book, I reread it. It really is a very good account, a behind-the-scenes account of the experience. But one thing he pointed out was the difficulty that the Democrats had in reducing their staff, because we had to go from probably about a 2-to-1 ratio. I don't know the exact rate, but it was significant, and down to 1-to-1. And Curtis had to convince his caucus that this was the new era.
Correct me if you disagree, but I think it would be fair to say that the Proposal A school funding overhaul was the signature accomplishment of the Sheriff Keller legislation. Agree?
Policy, yes, but I think institutionally, making the office of the clerk, the business office, the fiscal agency, nonpartisan offices were important legacies too.
I would agree, Paul. And what hasn't been mentioned, and that was, I just thought of this, and maybe I was blacking it out. But you know, in the middle of all this, in the beginning, was the House Fiscal Agency. And when you think about the fact that we were doing all the stuff that we were talking about, and that went on, and we were able to collectively recover, and things moved on. I'm not sure that what, I mean, if institutionally, I think Paul's right, but I think institutionally, the fact that we were able to recover, and both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, we recovered pretty decently and moved on. But in that I remember being in Pat Gagliardi's office when Stanley Simon called and said, Deputy Attorney General, you said we have a problem and walked through it. And, you know, probably 6 or 8 weeks later, while it was terrible, we had moved on to run the House of Representatives. And when you think about that, it's almost, you know, hard to believe, because that was very difficult for everybody, and certainly for the institution.
The fact that the House Fiscal Agency still exists and is such a respected institution is kind of astonishing, considering, you know, what they went through.
I agree, and I give Curtis and Pat a lot of credit for stepping up and doing what was right. And that was not easy to do because it was entrenched. I happen to believe that Dominic Jacobetti was a victim as much. Others would disagree, that's my view. But I think Pat and Curtis stood tall, dealt with it. And once I think, and Paul, I don't know, I believe, and we talked about it, that once they stood up and dealt with the situation, which wasn't very much fun, I think it sent a message that we meant business in the sense of trying to make things work.
Absolutely. That was an early, I think almost the first week after the beginning of session. And it was such an important message that the Democratic leadership was serious about building the integrity of the institution. And it really could have become a political issue, and their moves caused us to not politicize it at all. We worked together to solve the problem.
We are going to take a few minutes to open the floor to questions. I do want to bring this back around to policy making and proposal A. And just to briefly set the stage, so in what was actually a political maneuver where someone's bluff was called, the Michigan legislature scrapped the system for funding schools and paying for it using property taxes. And we were left with nothing. And and no system for doing that, and a deadline for getting it done.
It wasn't somebody, it was John Engler that called Debbie Savinow's bluff. That's what happened.
That is what happened. So, and I remember, I'm a state reporter, and we've got national media parachuting in, and all the journalists were coming in from NPR, from the New York Times, from the Washington Post, and asking, are these, this is a really unique environment, are these guys up to it? And my answer was always, I don't know. I don't know. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take that same situation and drop it into today. Term limits, hyper-partisanship. How would you see that working out compared to what we witnessed 25 years ago?
It would be hard to do. I mean, when you think about it, and I know, Paul, that was true on the Republican side. We had really veteran members of both caucuses that negotiated this deal. You had people like Lynn John Jim Agee, Kurt Prophet, that were in the room doing this stuff. And Don Gilmer, Bill Bullard, Shirley Johnson.
Bill Bryant.
And so I don't know that it's fair to compare it because it's a different time. So I don't. It's a fair question. I just don't know that you can even make a comparison given the time and given the situation.
Well,
Yeah.
let me throw the unfair question.
Well, yeah, first of all, I'll never forget the evening when my wife and I were preparing dinner and I get a call from John Engler and Dick Postma saying, guess what we just did in the Senate? And by the way, the bill's coming over to scrap the school funding by the end of the year. We hope you'll move it tomorrow. So that was a big decision point for me. And I did think about it. But I really concluded, and I'm not sure this would be true today, that it would have been harder to let the schools go by the board, let them self-destruct, than it would be to vote for a tax increase to resolve the issue. I really thought the legislature under the gun would have to figure out a way to do it. Now, we had, and this is, I think it's harder today because of term limits, we had this group of 14 who worked out the details that became the basis of Proposal A that had been working on school finance reform and had failed in several ballot proposals for many of them for 15, 20 years. And when Jim Blanchard tried to take on the problem, this bipartisan group in the House actually came up with an alternative proposal that we put on the ballot and challenged Jim Blanchard's proposal, which became the basis for John Engler's campaign, in fact. But we had, that's a long way of saying, pre-term limits, we had a group of members who knew the issue, had been working on it for years, and had relationships. And certainly, that's not as easy today.
We're going to have to spend some time on relationships, because I've talked with both of you guys about that, and that's what we both come back to. One of the things that I'm struck by is that when I started covering the Capitol in 1987, you could argue, especially in the House, that there were actually three caucuses. There was the Republicans, there was the Democrats, and there was appropriations. And that was where a lot of the deal making went. That's where a lot of the moderates, especially on the Republican side, wound up. Do you see anything in the current environment that compares to that, where you've got a place that's, a trading ground?
Well, I think in the appropriation process, no matter whether it's term limits or not term limits, if you're a serious legislator, you got to do your homework and you learn the business of the legislature and the budget and the state government. If you're going to be a good legislator, you have no choice but to study and learn. And so it's almost a course that you wish the whole legislature could take. So I think that if you're an aspiring to get elected, you want to be on the appropriations committee, because I think you just get pushed into your learning curve becomes much stronger, at least from my observation.
What do you think?
Well, it was almost a third party, and there were tensions in both caucuses about the role of appropriations versus policy committees. For all of the difficulties in moving budget bills, pre-term limits, and there was a lot of debate, and sometimes we'd go into the fall before budgets were resolved. Honestly, in today's term-limited legislature, I worry sometimes about the process by which appropriations are handled. They tend to be lumped together, and it goes very fast, and yes, it's on time. But I'm not sure there's a learning process that exists in pre-term limits. But one of the challenges I had when I was able to make appointments to the Appropriations Committee was to deal with the tensions in our caucus around that issue. And we had 4 members, very conservative, who we called the No Caucus. They voted against every appropriations bill every year. And I chose to appoint as co-chair of the House Appropriations Government Affairs or Government Operations Committee, Tim Walker. And Tim had never voted for a budget bill in his career. And he asked me, why are you doing this? And I said, because I believe that when you have to make a budget, when you have to put a budget together, you will finally vote yes. And he did. That was just one of the many lessons I learned in shared power, how important it is as a leader not to always seek absolute control, but to let go and let members of your caucus and the other caucus help to set agendas and help to do problem solving. And I think that was the beauty of shared power. Curtis and I had to let go and let some very good caucus members work together to solve problems.
I think we eventually got a yes vote from every member of that No Caucus at some point, including
Mike
and Margaret O'Connor.
Well, I'm not sure we ever got it from David Jay.
Is he here? I want to open up, I've got a couple more questions, but I want to open up the questions from the floor. Now, we are technically handicapped in that we have only one microphone. So if you've got a question, maybe you could raise your hand, step forward. We'll try to hear you as best we can, then repeat it so that it's recorded if that works. So if you're interested, step forward. But in the meantime, Paul, for a second, I want to ask you a question. So you went from being an entrenched minority to shared power to this period of majority, competitive majority. You went back and forth, but competitive majority. What lessons did you take from shared power that you carried into being in the majority, being the speaker?
Yeah. Dan may disagree, I hope not, but,
I think we need some tension.
Yeah. Clearly, we, being the majority for the first time in 26 years, I felt pressure to move an agenda that couldn't have been moved in shared power. And certainly John Engler had that goal too. By the way, haven't said enough about John Engler. But say what you will, those of you who remember John, he loved the institution of the legislature. And he really, in the end, did support us, I believe, in shared power. For sure, he tried to find a 56 vote for our caucus. But he really respected the arrangement we had. And we had an advantage with his influence, certainly in the Democratic caucus. But when all is said and done, John Engler knew the institution as well as any governor and respected it. That being said, when we became majority, we had pressure to move an agenda, but we weren't a unified caucus. And I think we took from the lesson of shared power that it was better to try and forge coalitions, mainly of Republicans, but Democrats, to get things done. And most of the time, we moved things with 56 votes with a split caucus. and a bipartisan majority. I also would like to think, and I believe this is true, Curtis and I continue to have a very good relationship, sharing information, working together when we could, and I think that was true of our co-committee chairs as well. That carried over, as did the nonpartisan nature of the clerk's office, the business office, the House Fiscal Agency. We decided, and this is something I believe very strongly in, that with term limits beginning to set in, it was very important that we have nonpartisan, experienced people supporting the operation of the House. And happily, the Democrats were even able to control it a couple of years later.
Yeah, I think that to the point on Governor Engler, if you go back to proposal A, Paul, Curtis, and the governor, and most of the leadership, as I look at Pat back there, and I see Tracy Yokich back there too, in the end, those people believed you had to have a deal. And that, for the most part, that was the philosophy of most of the legislators at that time, and that allowed a deal. But I think long lasting, in fact, we're 25 years later, and you have a nonpartisan business office, you have a nonpartisan fiscal agency. There are marks that continue, and I think we were able to forge that during that time.
Before we get to questions, I want to say one other thing about why I think it's so much harder today. We talked a lot about term limits. I think it was a bad idea, and it's proved to be worse than I thought it would be. But when I left the House in the end of '96, people were just beginning to use email. And what digital communications has done, I think, to legislative bodies is hard for me to fathom. But this I know, when Dan talks about the desire to make a deal, without the kind of communication we have today, it really was possible for us to represent our districts and still compromise and make deals and not have to pay the price back home. Today, when you make deals, it's instantaneous communication, and I think it's a whole lot harder. All I know is when I talk to members today, they worry a whole lot more about primaries than they do general elections.
There are a lot of reasons for that.
A lot of reasons.
Dan, you have a question?
I do. So, what was the shared power agreement? Was it like a contract? I mean, like, how did that formulate? I mean, what?
What were the mechanics of the
Yeah, like,
shared power
and,
agreement?
like,
How did you come up with that?
Did someone write it?
Okay, was it a contract?
It was a contract. Actually, one of the great pictures of Michigan political history is Paul and Curtis with an olive branch when they signed the deal. So it was negotiated out. It was put to paper. We haggled back and forth for 2 or 3 days, if I remember correctly, and the leaders signed it. And so it was a contract.
But it ended up, we adopted the House rules at the beginning of the session. The contract became House rules. And by the way, Dan, the olive branch with a photo of Curtis presenting the olive branch to me hangs on my office wall.
So,
I didn't want to cut you off. You had more to
No,
say.
another question.
What I was going to ask was, as outstanding as this experience is described as being 55-55, and you worked it out and all the rest of that stuff, no one would go into it designing it that way. There's a reason that the Constitution says that the Lieutenant Governor breaks ties in the Senate and so on. So, what with an extraordinary situation like that, was there any contemplation of constitutional reform, whether it's making 111 seats in the House instead of 110?
Did you ever think about changing the Constitution to create odd numbers? And both the House and the Senate are even number of districts.
no, I don't think we did. And I think actually, when you do the odds, when you think about elections over a 50-year period, the odds of this happening in 50 years is not particularly high. And what it did, I think, is give, and my Democratic friends probably won't like this, but it was because you had absolute power for as long as you did, it was sort of a checkpoint, and things changed a little bit. And it's still reflected today. So I think, you know, change in power, change in leadership, a tie in leadership once in a while reboots the system, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Another lesson learned about the experience of shared leadership, 1992, when the voters gave us the split house, they also gave us term limits because there was such great cynicism about the legislative body. Proposal A, I think, had a lot to do with it, but I like to think shared leadership did. The legislature's approval ratings for the first time in a couple of decades at least went over 50% in the state. People weren't interested in changing the Constitution. I think they liked shared power.
No, there was even talk of trying to figure out some way to institutionalize even aspects of it, although that really wasn't workable.
Never would have worked. I think, you know, it was a special moment in time. We had special leaders. It was a different situation. You know, it's like, you know, that's why they don't make great movies all the time. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, you sort of enjoy it. And just so I don't forget, because I want to say this to the family, I was fairly reticent to do this, but because I should be sitting, leadership should sit here. But I thought it was, when we talked through it, I talked to Paul about it, and I talked to both Curtis and Kevin about it, how important it was to keep this discussion going. And so, as we're 55 minutes into it, I'm glad to do it.
And keep in mind that this isn't just a Michigan discussion. As unique as it is that when other states face this challenge, I mean, they call and they want to know, what do you know? What did you learn? How did it work out? That it was a model for making it work. Jeff?
Jeff Batten, I was a Democratic member of the House for 10 years, from 75 through 84, so I did not have the pleasure of serving under power. But I do know that each term during my tenure, both caucuses were focused pretty sharply on what it would take to pick up seats in the next election. In your situations, there was so much more at stake than there had been previously. What was the strategy that each of the caucuses had to try to pick up one or more seats in the 94 election?
Okay, give us your elevator pitch. What was your strategy to break the tie in the subsequent elections?
And of course, you succeeded. We did, ever so narrowly. I think the Republican partisan staff had pretty much the same strategy we always had, which is focus on the swing districts, do a lot of polling and raise money and go into those districts. It was a little more challenging probably for those who worked on the campaigns because everything we did was pretty much bipartisan. So we weren't taking a lot of hot shots at each other about what the other side was doing on policy this year. I think it was much more local district focused.
Paul, did that start to change as you got closer to the election?
The question was, did that start to change as the election grew closer?
Honestly, Jeff, I don't remember. Yeah, and you know, I've said this before, but it's a confession of sorts. I think part of the reason I don't remember so well is that my best 2 years were shared leadership, and I kind of lost my appetite for the traditional seeking of control. It really changed my ambitions politically. I didn't have as much fun being speaker, and I was ready to leave the House after 2 years as speaker.
So why did you stay?
I felt we had gone so far, I didn't stay after we were 56, 54, I left. Before term required me to leave. But I didn't feel I could leave at 55, being on the verge of being a majority. I had served as leader of the caucus for 8 years, and I felt it was time to finish the job if I could.
What was your plan for trying to win 56 or more?
I don't think it was much different, although I would say the one seat that flipped in shared power was in Redford when John Bennett retired. And Jim Ryan beat Kevin Kelly. And it was, it was all over one issue. And abortion rights and right to life. And Jim Ryan beat Kevin pretty handily. But 2 years later, that seat flipped when the Democrats went to won 3 seats. And so, it was, I think it was the same, Paul. I mean, you looked at seats you could win, and you tried to win it, you defended. I spent an awful lot of time in the 2 years making sure that our members in vulnerable districts didn't make what we perceived as dumb votes. And my assumption is it was the same way on the Republican side.
You felt it was very important, and you write about this in the book, that when you made the deal for shared power, that you locked it in for the term. That things happen during the course of the term. People resign, people die, there are scandals. Why was it so important to lock it in, Dan, and what were the benefits of that?
Well, if you think about it, when you go through the litany of what happened, it was much more on the Democratic side. For example, even before the day of the vote, what we agreed to is you had to have 56 votes to control it. And Joe Young Sr. was from Detroit and very ill. He had cancer. In fact, never came back to the House because of his illness. We went as far at the time as to, I'm not sure if I'm proud of this or it's just to say the history, we reserved a hotel room in his name at the Radisson to make sure nothing goofy happened the next day. That was a little, I think, the paranoia that we had early on. But you had Dave Hollister got elected mayor of Lansing. Charlie Harrison got elected mayor of Pontiac. Steve Shepard resigned from the House. So you had all these instances where had you had not a strong rule, you don't know what would have happened. And so as it turned out, not that we know it, because it all was historical after the fact, it played a role. And nobody ever pushed that envelope anyways. I think as time went on, after the first month or two, there was a trust on the rules of the way we did business. And so I don't know that
Dan, you talked about the night before, but yes, you reserved the room, but the night before, an important trust building moment, Curtis called me and said, Joe Young will not be here. And I said, well, Curtis, we may have trouble getting a Northern Michigan representative down with a snowstorm going on, and Ken Sigelman may not make it back from a trip to Europe. So we're in the same boat, and we intend to stick with the rules that we put together.
And no regrets.
Absolutely not. Now, having said that, even though it was a good thing to lock in shared leadership requiring 56 votes, when a member passed on or ran for another office and won, it did change the votes required to get legislation passed. And we did depart from total collegiality in the bloody spring of '94, I believe it was, when we did move some Republican bills that we had wanted to do for a long time.
What bills were those?
Penalties for teacher strikes and restricting political bingo, if I recall.
Political bingo never goes away. We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to give you guys some time for some closing remarks. I do quickly want to share one, as a point of personal privilege, share a quick anecdote about John Engler and his respect for the legislature. I remember one of his final vetoes was a bill that the legislature sent him that would require every session of the House and Senate to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And he vetoed it and sent it back with a letter that said, you're the legislature, you can put this into your rules, and you ought not to be handing an iota of your authority over to the executive branch, just on your own.
Richard McClellan probably wrote that.
I suspect you're correct. So, when you look at the lessons of shared power, what advice would you give to the legislative leaders and the legislators of today about how to handle their jobs?
Well, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I would say that the more that you can get to know who you're serving makes an enormous difference. Because it's pretty difficult to become not even friends, but acquaintances. When you know people and you know about them, you know about their families, you know about their thought processes, even though you may or may not disagree with them. It gives you insight on how they're thinking. And I think part of the problem with term limits is you never have enough time to do that. And I think as you watch, we collectively were forced into doing that. And even though we were forced into doing it, it didn't sound so hot in the beginning. It turned out to be, I look at Kirk Prophet there and Tracy and Tad from from the Democratic side. They would talk about stories about people that they became close with and the experience they had. And it's 25 years ago, and you remember it like it was yesterday. And that has an influence on how we do public policy, in my estimation. I don't know that you can recreate that because you only have 6 years in the House and 8 years in the Senate. But when you know the people you're dealing with, I think it does make a difference.
Paul?
Yeah, a couple of things I always share with new leaders, not that advice is always good, but my first experience in the legislature in 1979 was being invited to seminars that the then tax policy chair, George Montgomery from Detroit, who'd been there for a couple of decades or more, held for freshmen and other interested members on tax policy. It was a learning experience. It was a seminar where he would bring in professors and we learned tax policy and got to know each other in those early weeks. And so my advice has always been, if you can withstand the pressure as a new leader who controls the agenda, tell your committee chairs not to move any bills for the first month or two and do nothing but take your committees out on the road and get to learn the issues you're going to have jurisdiction over and get to know each other and then go to work. And secondly, and I think we've lost this a little bit. I think we're moving almost to more of a parliamentary system. But relish the opportunities to build bipartisan coalitions to pass legislation. Don't feel that you can only move bills, even tough bills, on a purely partisan vote. You're far better off letting some of your members go who are in tough districts who need to represent their districts and have trouble voting for that bill. And you're far better off in terms of moving on to the next big problem, doing things on a bipartisan basis.
Have any of the leaders listened to that advice?
I think it's, this isn't impacted term limits fully. I think it's digital communications, but term limits put so much more pressure on leaders who don't know their caucuses very well and don't have the relationships. So it's hard.
Paul Hillegom was the Republican co-speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives during the historic shared power session. Dan Lepp was the chief of staff to Democratic co-speaker Curtis Sertel and has written a book about the experience. Thank you very much, both of you.